Here we are again. It's a whole new week. It's the 6th of December. Good morning. I'm Anthony Davis, and this is Backchannel. Just after 9 here on the West Coast, just after noon Eastern. And I'm here for a couple of hours to kind of just work through the day with you, to check out the news, see what's happening across the country, chew the fat, chew the cud, get a sense of who you are, and I'll maybe talk a little bit about what's going on with me. And the whole thing's interactive. You just talk to your device. You just say your wake-up word followed by say, and then your message, and then your Echo speaker or your Echo screen, little Echo show will just make everything perfect for you. That's the whole point of this, is that it works in that arena of the Echo show. So it's a nice day today here in California. Very nice start to the week. It's been very chilly. My parents are in town. It's like, I feel like the December Christmas season has begun. We're now at that point where it's the countdown. My tree's up. the Amazon elves are getting very busy. I sense that there's a lot of that going on. Anyway, we're going to dive into the morning papers and see what's happening. And if you want to get in touch, then you can use the web chat facility. Just go to backchannel.tv. And if you're watching on YouTube, there's the comments section there as well. We're going to take a look at the life of Bob Dole today, the late Bob Dole, the Republican senator who has passed away at the age of 167. And we're going to talk about his life. He was very, very popular, which is interesting how, he was a great humorist, had amazing comic timing. People really liked him. He was from the days before the Republican Party embraced the far right, and they were just conservatives, just like regular. And so it was nice that he was able to kind of integrate with everybody, as opposed to being seen as a kind of a lunatic. He was very popular, and he only just lost the election. So we'll talk about his life and whether or not you think that we'll ever see those types of politicians ever again. Who really do appeal to both sides of the aisle. We're going to look at decriminalizing drugs, Oregon's pioneering move, but is it panning out the way they'd hoped? Also, the big debate on the right to bear arms after Congressman Thomas Massey's gun-toting family Christmas photo. Just 4 days after the school shooting, he decides to pose with a bunch of automatic weapons, the likes of which you wouldn't even see in a Rambo movie. What a vile piece of work that man is. And he was like, Merry Christmas. What does he say? All we want for Christmas is ammo. Something like that. Also on this day in 1849, Harriet Tubman escaped from slavery in Maryland for the second and final time. We'll remember her incredible bravery. Take a look back at her life. And there's a very good movie about her life that recently came out, just called Harriet, which stars a British actress called Cynthia Erivo. So, there we go. Some interesting things to consider. Let's jump straight into the morning papers, though. I think we're going to start with the Wichita Eagle. If you're from Kansas, then this is going to be very useful for you. Bob Dole dies at 98. There it is. Kansas native, was a war hero, senator, and presidential candidate, it says. The son of a Kansas Dust Bowl who survived a crippling barrage of Nazi fire on an Italian hillside to lead his party in the U.S. Senate, but who fell short of his highest ambition, the presidency. He died Sunday. I watched an interview with him and David Letterman from about, 20 years ago. And he said to him, if Bill Clinton offered you a job in the White House, is there any job you would consider? And he goes, sure, his job. Which I thought was very funny and very quick. Very, very quick. Proud, uncommonly driven, and possessed of a dark, self-effacing wit, Dole went to Washington a rock-hard Great Plains conservative, but evolved into a pragmatic master of legislative compromise. He voted against Medicare as a young House member in the 1960s, but worked with Democratic Senator George McGovern a decade later to protect food stamps. He was a driving force behind the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act, which required businesses and institutions to be more accessible to the disabled. Isn't it tragic that was only 1990? If you're a wheelchair user pre-1990, forget it. I retweeted a video. I don't normally retweet videos that are graphic, and I have a personal rule against it, but I retweeted one yesterday, which was a police officer executing a wheelchair user for entering a Lowe's store. This guy was taking back a knife with a receipt, and obviously someone had called it in as a guy with a knife. He was going into a home improvement store, for goodness sake, and he was in a motorized wheelchair, and the police officer was behind him and told him to stop, but of course the guy couldn't turn around and look and see what was happening, so he kept moving. So the guy shot him 9 times in the back. Executed him. He fell out of his wheelchair. He was just taking something back to a Lowe's store, just a regular person, not a criminal, just a regular person. And nothing will happen to that police officer. He was actually off duty. He was working as a security officer at the Lowe's store and decided to murder this guy with 9 bullets. And you watch the whole thing, it's on security footage. And it's like, wow, really? And the whole debate about wheelchair access takes on a whole new meaning when you're looking at this. It's like, these are the people that are supposed to protect and serve us, you know? And so we have to fear for our lives. Remarkable. Politicians Lord Dole's Kentucky roots work across the aisle. Yes, Kansas icon Bob Dole's death Sunday has deeply affected the multiple generations of Kansas politicians who learned their craft from the former senator and presidential candidate. Former Senator Pat Roberts, who knew Dole for decades, spoke to him just days before his death, mourned his political mentor and friend, and one of his most influential figures of American politics. So that's how the Wichita Eagle is leading today's news. And of course, Bob Dole being a Kansas native, so therefore so much extra coverage of Bob Dole there. Let's jump on to the Desert Sun now. The Desert Sun is from Palm Springs, California. I've been to Palm Springs. What a wonderful place. It's very warm there, though. It's very dry heat. It's very dry. Even the cactus are like, oof. Cannabis suspension temporarily withdrawn. It says Palm Springs attorney reprieve for Joy Meredith likely to be brief. This is a Palm Springs businesswoman can resume business activities at her cannabis business for now, after the city withdrew its suspension of her permits to operate her cannabis dispensary, lounge and grow operation business in the city. However, the city attorney said one other attorney at his firm is poised to issue a second letter that will reimpose the suspension and clarify the nature of the alleged violations of the city rules for cannabis businesses that led to the city to issue the suspensions. I mean, make your mind up. You know, is cannabis legal or not legal in California? You know, just pick one. Pick your favorite. So there we go. That's kind of how the front of the... is there anything else? Oh, there's a story about the Ironman competition. I was going to enter it this time, but I was just so busy. It says Canadian Lionel Sanders finishing first in Ironman 70.3 Indian Wells La Quinta for the third time on Sunday, renewing his title as the sole winner of the race before it began in 2018. Or since it began. I was going to say, he hasn't been cycling since 2018, has he? Vaccine equity remains a concern as holidays near. Yes, as the Omicron... It's Omicron, actually. I've been doing a bit of work on the pronunciation of this. And... so I originally called it Omicron, and then some people were saying it's Omicron, and then I did a lot more in-depth research. I basically listened to the BBC World Service, and they're saying Omicron, and they have a pronunciation department, you see. They have literally a whole office of people working on pronunciation. And so if the World Service is saying Omicron, then I'm saying Omicron. That's obviously how it's pronounced. So yes, as the Omicron variant continues to spread, health officials are renewing their push to give COVID-19 vaccines to all Americans, especially to people of color. Available data from the CDC suggests the vaccination rates among black people still currently lag behind those of white people. We've talked about this a lot on this show, and we'll, I'm sure, continue to talk about this subject because it's obviously a big thing. All right, let's cross the country now and jump on to the New York Times for this Monday morning, December 6. A story out of Beirut, built upon Syria's ruins, a drug empire flourishes. This is built on the ashes of 10 years of war in Syria, an illegal drug industry run by powerful associates and relatives of President Bashar al-Assad have grown into a multi-billion dollar operation, eclipsing Syria's legal exports and the... oh, there we go. Let me just ping that in. Welcome back. Carla disappeared for a moment, but she returned because, she loves this show so much. She's just bring it on. Bring it on. I want to see more. Yes, an investigation by the New York Times found that... where is it? Oh, yeah. Found that much of the production and distribution is overseen by the 4th Armored Division of the Syrian Army, an elite unit commanded by Maher al-Assad, the president's youngest brother and one of Syria's most powerful men. I mean, this is the reality, isn't it, of the corruption. It's like even the president's in on the drug deals. Part-time president, part-time drug dealer. It's a family business. Come and get your snacks. Also on the front of the New York Times, how Omicron, undetected, stayed a step ahead. It says they wore fluorescent wigs and capes with gold tassels as they arrived in knee-high white platform boots. Where's this going? With feathered wings affixed to their backs, dressed just like their favorite characters or wearing street clothes, they packed into Manhattan's main convention hall. Oh, I know where this is going. This is like a Comic-Con event, right? Which is a super spreader event. That's where this is. I was very worried somebody had pasted the wrong story in as a joke. Yes, 53,000 members were at the main convention hall in Manhattan to celebrate their love of Japanese animation shows known as anime. And in the crowd was Peter McGinn, a 30-year-old healthcare analyst in town from Minneapolis. He attended with discussion panels, chatted with strangers about his anime podcast, and at night sang karaoke with friends. After flying home, he learned that one friend from the convention, an anime fan from North Carolina, had just tested positive for coronavirus. In the days to come, many more friends from the convention would test positive as well. Coughing and feeling tired, Mr. McGinn also took a test. He had the virus too. That was November 23rd, a day before most scientists had even heard of the new variant that was tearing across southern Africa. The WHO has not yet even given the variant a name, Omicron, but it was already present in the United States, undetected. And we said this, didn't we? We said, it's everywhere. It's just everywhere. Because, and this is why, when Donald Trump I watched him being interviewed yesterday, still trying to take credit for shutting the country down on the 30th of January to China. The virus was already in Italy. It was prevalent in Italy. It was already in Europe. It was already, and do you know how many flights come from Europe into America every day? Thousands. It's just remarkable that guy is just so desperate to take the credit for something that, and then he claims he shut down all the other airlines, and he didn't. It was the airlines that shut down. There was no executive order about shutting down airlines. They all decided that they weren't going to fly. It was like an industry thing. Also here on the New York Times, without Roe, path to abortion would be intricate and costly. It says last week's Supreme Court arguments on a Mississippi abortion law raised the prospect of a return to a time half a century ago when the procedure was illegal across most of the United States and women perilously tried to end pregnancies on their own or sought back alley abortions. Well, if the court decides to reverse or weaken the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling, it will usher in a somewhat different era. Abortion would remain legal in more than half of states, but not in a wide swathe of the Midwest and the South. Legislatures in 22 states would almost certainly move to ban or substantially restrict access to abortion. They should change that word from legislatures to men. Men in 22 states would almost certainly move to ban or substantially restrict access to abortion. Bernie Sanders made a very good point recently. He said if men were the ones that carried the child and gave birth to the child, they would want to have the right to choose whether or not they kept their baby. If men had a womb, they would want the right to choose. But the fact that men don't have a womb, this is a very convenient way of a gender power grab for men to tell women what they can do with their bodies. That's really the crux of this. It's the joy that men, a certain type of man, get at basically being able to define what a woman does and doesn't do with her body. I don't think it has anything to do with scripture, Bible, God, faith. It's just ownership. Just ownership. It's like modern slavery, you know? And of course, the only people that won't be able to travel out of state to get a necessary abortion after a sexual assault or similar are the poor. And the poor will be invariably ethnic minority groups. And if the white supremacist is trying to ban abortion and also fears the black man in America, then subconsciously and unconsciously, they are actually encouraging an increase in African American people to be in America because they're preventing them from not having unwanted pregnancies. Just so in the long run, it'll just diminish the white supremacist, and they're already worried. I just connect all of this to whiteness and gender inequality. In my head, this is all this is. This is the abortion argument is white supremacy, and it's gender. It's a gender fight against equality. Because I haven't heard a solitary argument yet from anybody about why this is a good idea. And there was a congressman that put out a video the other day where he talked about a genocide of unborn babies. And I was like, wow. I mean, they don't even care anymore, do they? You know, they're just going for it. They're not even pretending to care. Just going for it. Also, a big photograph of Bob Dole on the front of the New York Times this morning, the plain-spoken son of the prairie, who overcame Dust Bowl deprivation in Kansas and grievous battle wounds in Italy to become the Senate Majority Leader in the last of the World War II generation to win his party's nomination for president. He died on Sunday. He was 98. His death was announced by the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. It did not say where he died. He'd announced in February that he had stage 4 lung cancer and he was beginning treatment. The last of the World War II generation to win the Republican nominee for president. I mean, all I really crave in a presidential candidate and a potential president is somebody who has a soul, a heart, and empathy. I don't really care about their politics anymore. I've gone beyond that because I believe that, you know, there is different types of politics and, you know, the majority must choose because I believe in democracy. But I'm so conscious now that we have a new generation of politicians who are soulless, have no empathy, who are so authoritarian that they are the ones I fear. And I really fear more than anybody right now Ron DeSantis, who announced 2 days ago that he is trying to put together a volunteer paramilitary group to be a reserve guard in Florida that would work outside of the jurisdiction of the federal government. They claim it's for like natural disasters, but we know that it is to prevent protest, to take on any of those nasty Democrats, if indeed there is a solitary one left in Florida. They haven't all moved to California. It's like there's been this swap. You know, the Republicans from California have now moved to Florida, and the Floridians have moved to California. It's just been a political, like a foreign exchange program. But DeSantis, he announced this. He announced this in a way that was just terrifying to me. He's throwing $3.5 million at this to get uniforms and weapons for this volunteer militia, and that's going to be his legacy for Florida before he becomes a presidential candidate. And he is exactly the type of person we should fear, because he is a smart operator. He's not an intellectual, but he's a smart operator. Well, he's Donald Trump light, isn't he? He's got a great tan. He probably uses the same products that Trump uses. Peanut butter. Smooth, not crunchy. Trump's one looks like it's crunchy. But DeSantis is like Trump light in many ways. Stacey, good morning. She said she can't stay too long because she has Bible study. Well, that's great. Stay as long as you need. I'll be here for you. As long as you need. Wall Street Journal this morning, they lead with a photograph of Bob Dole, was a Republican leader and Senate stalwart. And a nice photograph of him. Thumbs up. US says China eyes first Atlantic Navy base. Classified American intelligence reports suggest that China... Where's it gone? Oh, there it is. This is like an eye test for me. You see, I've started doing it on this screen over here and not my little screen down here because I was worried you were seeing the top of my head too much. But for now, this is like an eye test for me. I literally can't see anything. Oh, I've got new glasses. I don't know if you've noticed. The new spectacles are back. They have returned to the face. I like these glasses because they make me feel like I'm in the future. Like living in the future. They feel like they might be wired up to the main frame. This is a main frame. Classified American intelligence reports suggest China intends to establish its first permanent military presence on the Atlantic Ocean in the tiny Central African country of Equatorial Guinea, according to US officials. Should I be reading this out loud? If this is classified American intelligence, should I be saying this out loud? Should it even be on the front of the New York Times? Is there a reason that we are spreading this stuff, or should the security services not be dealing with it in a stealth-like fashion? The officials declined to describe the details of the secret intelligence findings, but they said the reports raised the prospect that Chinese warships would be able to rearm and fit opposite the Americans. A threat that is setting off alarm bells at the White House and the Pentagon. The principal deputy U.S. National Security Advisor John Feiner visited Equatorial Guinea in October on a mission to persuade President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo and his son and their apparent vice president, not another one, and the heir apparent vice president. This is like a test for me. I'm quite tired. It's an eye test and it's like a tongue test. This is a lot of work for a man who's had 6 hours sleep. The vice president, Teodorin Nguema Obiang Manang, to reject China's overtures. Thank you very much. Got there in the end. Do you know, I used to have a theory in England, and I'm sure it's the same in America, when children, not even just children, when anybody who was, because we have a lot of African migrants in the UK who come from Nigeria and, just across the African continent. And whenever they were involved in a crime, normally not as a perpetrator, but normally as a victim of crime. They'd been murdered or gone missing or any one of these tragic crimes. I used to be very conscious of the fact that newscasters didn't like reading their names aloud if they had African names like that. And so they wouldn't do the story. And so there was less coverage of Africans in the British media because people couldn't get their heads around the names. You ever find that, Carla? I spotted it years ago and I was like, this is definitely a thing. There is a of a desire in the newsroom by journalists and especially newscasters to tackle stories that involve African names, or in this case, Equatorial Guinea. It's very interesting to me. My favorite African, actually, who appeared on the television news in England was Guy Gomer. Do you remember Guy Gomer? The greatest story ever. This is the greatest news story ever. Guy Gomer was a taxi driver from the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. But he lived in London. And he was working as a driver for one of these. Before Uber, there was like a kind of car service with like a Ford Galaxy, that type of car. But he'd also applied, because in his other life he was a computer programmer, and he'd actually applied for a job at the BBC ages ago, and he'd never heard back, probably because he had an African name and there was a prejudice in the application process. So randomly, he's got a pickup. He's driving his taxi. He's got a pickup from somebody at the BBC News, at the BBC building. And the person that they then were calling for in the reception area to cover a story about Apple had a very similar name to Guy Gomer. And so somebody came out, a researcher from the TV show, called out for this guy, Guy Kwumi, I think his name was. Guy Kwumi. And they call out for Guy Kwumi, and Guy Gomer hears it, thinks it's him, and thinks that it's maybe to do with the interview, like an interview for the application that he made, like earlier, for computer programming. So he goes, yeah, me. So but because these people were both potentially Africans, and the researcher couldn't differentiate, she took him inside, mic'd him up, put him on the set of the BBC News, and interviewed him on camera on live BBC television news about this Apple. It was a story about copyright. It was about the Apple. I think it was about Apple Records and Apple Music. And Apple Music was going to be Apple Records, which was the Beatles record label, was going to be suing Apple because they were starting their music thing, the iTunes thing. I think that's what the story was. I don't know how I remember this stuff. There's a level of detail here which is, there's a touch of the Rain Man about me when it comes to this story. Anyway, the newscaster interviews him, and he's being interviewed, and he was very good. He answered the questions, he gave his opinion, but he had a French accent because he was from the Democratic Congo, and so he had this French accent. I do not know, it is not so easy for me. And it was the most amazing thing, and the newscaster's like thinking, this guy is really not an expert, because the guest was supposed to be an expert on this subject. She was thinking, there's something not right here. Anyway, he did the whole interview, she thanked him, it finished, and then boom, the story broke that this guy was in the wrong place, or the right place at the wrong time. And the whole process of booking guests for television news changed that day in the BBC. It was so good. And there was a photograph, or like a meme that went around of Guy Gomer when they asked him the first question about this subject, and his face was like this. It was so funny, and it went viral. He was like, "What is happening?" I loved it. We've gone on a bit of a tangent here. There's a slight digression from the script. But I think so look it up if you get the chance. It'll be on YouTube. Guy Gomer, BBC News. It's a very good story. Carla says everyone loves the news blooper. That was more than a news blooper. That was a whole live broadcast sequence with a whole series of errors from the moment that they went looking for their guest to the moment he thought they'd said his name. I wonder whatever happened to the real guest. whether he ever showed up in reception and was like watching the TV in reception and seeing someone pretending to be him on television. I wonder if he ever appeared. Anyway, it was a great story, and I really enjoyed it because, nobody got hurt. Guy Gomer got his 5 minutes of fame, and hopefully he got his job at the BBC working as a programmer. But the point is that it's like, I actually think that sometimes these types of stories are sent to kind of knit the nation together, because there's a great positive feeling of humanity when these types of events happen. And especially when it's between like a white newscaster and an African guest. It kind of, for me, this like solidifies the integration conversation. It gives us an opportunity to say, fundamentally, we are all the same. And for the racists who are so judgmental about people, to see a kind of human story told in a very unsuspecting way, I think it's great. I really hope Guy Gomer's doing okay. I wonder if maybe he's got like he didn't strike me the kind of guy, he'd strike me as a very publicity shy type of person. But I would just like to hope that he's doing okay now. Probably hosting his own news channel. That would be great, wouldn't it? Okay, let me jump back on some of your messages here. If you want to get in touch, you know where we are, by the way. You know how to do that. You know how to jump on us. You just talk to your device. If you have an echo show, you can say the wake-up word, followed by say, followed by your message. And you can go on the web chat, which is at backchannel.tv. And you can also watch us on YouTube. There's a live stream there. Just go to YouTube and search for Backchannel Anthony Davis or Anthony Davis Backchannel, and you'll find it there. Okay, where are we at next? To the Wall Street Journal. Did we do that yet? I can't remember if we did the Wall Street Journal. Oh, yeah, we did. Robust surveillance uncovers clues to Omicron's spread. It says researchers are rushing to determine how widespread the Omicron variant might be across the US, scouring COVID-19 test samples and in some cases even examining wastewater. Federal regulators